Drew here, and I really think that Season 3, Episode 4 of Servant, titled Ring, was the first great episode of Season 3 so far. The first truly great episode. I've enjoyed all of the episodes, but this was the first one that really stood out as something I think that was at the level of Season 1. It was just a delight from beginning to end. And it was a relatively short episode, 26 minutes, less than 26 minutes probably once you count the credits. But it managed to tell a rather complete story within that time. And it's kind of hard. This wasn't clearly anyone's particular episode. I guess if I had to be pinned down, I would say Leanne. But there were scenes where she wasn't in the frame, where it was focused on Dorothy or where it was focused on Sean. So it wasn't really a character, it wasn't really focused on one character in the way that a lot of the previous episodes had been. But there was so much going on in this episode, so much to analyze, so many questions. Julian barely appears this episode, but it's really focused on the show's two best characters, or who I consider to be the show's two best characters, Leanne and Dorothy. And Dorothy, it was interesting this episode how they managed to make me completely reverse my feelings about her in the course of one episode, or at least to reverse how I was feeling towards her. Because at the beginning of this episode, I was just really frustrated with her character.
I just need this 1 week to focus on myself and my work. Can you give me that?
She's clearly someone who is incredibly narcissistic. This isn't a major revelation about her character, but this episode, she took it to new extremes.
That's what my mother used to say. Whenever I would have to learn choreography for a pageant, she wouldn't let me eat dinner until I got it perfect.
Dorothy, I need you!
What is it?
The safety guy!
I've got this meeting that I'm supposed to go to. Are you coming back?
No. Sorry, but we can pick up again tomorrow. Yeah?
That's kind of the template for everything to follow this episode, is that Leanne really needs Dorothy. She really has needs, and she's just being unappreciated. And this culminates, after a series of different instances where Leanne is getting more overwhelmed by circumstances, whether it be the contractor who's coming in to baby-proof the house who is hitting on her, or Toby's girlfriend who is an absolute nightmare who's helping out in the kitchen. All this is culminating in her feeling completely overwhelmed and basically having a breakdown. And there's this moment between her and Toby where she's clearly, I think, kind of putting on him what she's feeling as far as Dorothy is concerned.
All you want is to live a normal life. And everybody keeps thinking that they can do whatever they want to you, awful things to you, and that you're always just going to be there.
I think that Dorothy has kind of taken on the role of Leanne's mother in her own mind. The mother, not that she had, but that she wishes that she had had, I think. And there's also a little bit of Freudian subtext, I feel, in that not only does she, view her as her mother, she also kind of views her as someone that she's looking to supplant. I think there's a lot of hints that she wants to take on Dorothy's role within the family, that she wants to be Jericho's mother, and that she wants to be Sean's lover. So where they go with this is anyone's guess. But this all culminates in the moment that was heavily foreshadowed throughout the episode, that I think is going to be the moment that everyone remembers the most from this episode, the accident with the hook. And the way things went down with they foreshadowed this first with Toby's girlfriend bringing up that she couldn't get her ring off because it was too tight. I have all kinds of nightmares about this sort of thing because I haven't been able to get my ring off for months and months and months. So I constantly worry about getting degloved in some kind of accident. So to see this sequence where they don't really actually show a terrible lot, it was relatively restrained despite feeling like they showed a lot. I imagine when I watched this episode with my wife, who is waiting to binge the whole season when it comes out, I imagine that my wife is going to just be screaming and taking her AirPod out and just not looking at the screen for this entire sequence. But I like to see what happens in a show, especially a show where I don't feel that the creators are actually gore hounds. Like, this is a relatively restrained show, so when they do depict violence, I feel like there's usually an intent behind it, and I want to see what they're going for. But this moment, clearly it's unclear how much of this was intentionally caused by Leanne. She can control things in the environment at times. It's been established with her emotions. Some people are theorizing that Jericho is causing things to happen, but I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence for that just yet. It's possible, but it seemed to me that this was Leanne, but she was having this meltdown, and this kind of resulted in this accident happening in which Toby's girlfriend loses her finger. And then, it was unclear to me how much of what happened with the garbage disposal, where, Toby's looking for the finger and then accidentally flips the switch on the garbage disposal, causing the finger to get shredded. All very disgusting, but, done more artistically than graphically. I'm not sure how much of this was intended by Leanne and how much of it was just the result of bad circumstances and her emotional state, causing her to lash out. I feel, obviously she's done some things that are morally dubious with her powers. If she intended for any of this to happen, it's probably the worst thing she's done, even though Toby's girlfriend is absolutely the worst. The way that she got so abusive verbally with him, and the way that she was just completely unprofessional in her demeanor. Obviously, she seems very, very competent in the kitchen, but they really didn't do a whole lot to make her likable this episode. She kind of reminded me of a younger Elliot Page, the actress, did, but very, I felt like I had seen her before, and I think that's what it was, is that not that I've seen her before, that she just reminds me of a younger Elliot Page, but she did a really good job in a limited role, just really making me aggravated with the character and hate her. But as much as I disliked her, she really didn't deserve that, and that was just a really, really awful thing to happen to anyone. This episode wraps up, so there's tension this whole episode between Dorothy and Leanne, and this is probably what I thought was the most interesting aspect of the episode. And I think it's important to note, I don't think the show is reproaching Dorothy for wanting to have a job. I think the show is reproaching her for the fact that she's so self-centered that she puts her own needs above everyone else's and doesn't seem to realize that she's doing it. She constantly excuses her behavior as though she's doing things for others.
I love my job. It makes me happy. It makes me a better mother. And if, God forbid, anything ever happened to Sean, I can support this household.
And she just completely lacks self-awareness in doing it. So clearly, I think Leanne caused this situation to happen, where there was crying off screen while she's doing this interview that sounds suspiciously like Jericho, and this causes her to have one of her moments where she kind of has this shocked reaction, realizing maybe subconsciously what happened to Jericho previously, and now her career is seemingly over. And again, I don't think the career is the problem so much as the fact that, a lot of women have careers, but when they're not at the job, they do everything they can to put their children and the needs of other people in their lives before their own. And Dorothy pretty consistently doesn't do that. When she says something is for Jericho, it's usually for her. When she says something is for Leanne, oftentimes it's for her. She doesn't really put that much thought into the people around her. And obviously Leanne is obsessed with her. The wordless hug that she gives her at the end of this episode, and the way that she tells her that she's glad that she's back and that Jericho needs her. Obviously, Leanne is being very manipulative and controlling of Dorothy this season. And, as I said, it was amazing to me how over the course of this episode, I found myself going from being very, very frustrated and angry with Dorothy for the way that she kind of manipulates everyone around her, to feeling this large degree of sympathy for her as she has this breakdown and realizes that her career, which is so important to her, is probably over. So to me, well done there, having this come in a complete arc. And then, to top the episode off, having Leanne doing this dance by herself, kind of, taking the episode full circle, because it started with her and Dorothy getting ready to exercise, to do this dance together, and then ends with her doing it all by herself, having, handled situations her own way and, coming to her own sense of peace about things. I thought it was really interesting, the response of the seemingly homeless people who kind of, I'm starting to suspect, are probably all cult members, but maybe that their intentions are different than we previously suspected. I'm starting to wonder if they're not gravitating to Leanne like moths to a flame, if they don't actually mean her harm, but they're actually inspired by her, maybe to leave the cult and set out on their own. It seems like that could be what's going on based on the one guy who approached Leanne outside the apartment this episode. So all in all, I really enjoyed this episode. It was tense, it was funny, it was gross, it was emotionally devastating. It was everything that I look for in an episode of Servant. So in short, I really, really enjoyed it. But let me know what you thought in the comments. If you're interested in seeing my reviews of upcoming shows, such as Servant, please consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, thank you so much for watching.